Now I would like to give the floor to Audrey Mashigo. She is a magistrate at the South African Judicial Education Institute. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to thank an invite that we have received to South Africa to come and make a presentation here. I am a senior magistrate in the South African judiciary, and additionally, I'm a judicial educator at the South African Judicial Education Institute, which is responsible for educating magistrates around the country. And trafficking is but one of the subjects that we offer to our magistrates, because some of them are not familiar with how trafficking works due to the fact that certain cases are not coming through to them. And I need to acknowledge that my country is but one of the countries where we have problems with regards to human trafficking as such, and in response to that, the country has enacted comprehensive framework to prevent and combat human trafficking in 2013, and it began taking implementation in 2015. So various institutions have to play a role in the fight of human trafficking, and as such also the judiciary is also have to be involved in the fight against human trafficking with the matters that are presented before us. And the question that I'm asking here is that, apart from the fact that the matters have to be brought before us through cases and all that, are we as presiding officers, not only who are sitting in court, but also those who are dealing with children's matters and family courts, vigilant enough? So the topic that I'm going to look at here is, are we vigilant enough as judicial officers? I must confess that in as much as we do not have enough statistics about the cases that are coming through to the courts for us to make a determination as to whether are we making an impact or not on issues of human trafficking or not, I tried to get some from the National Prosecuting Authority. They also do not have a clear data as to how many cases they have and that have gone through or reported, let alone those ones that have eventually managed to come to court and presented, either people convicted or acquitted. So it is difficult. At the moment, we do have various judgments that focus on the practicality to it, what is the magistrate or court confronted with when dealing with a case of cybercrime or of trafficking in these instances. Exactly what is it that you have to look at? Because that is the problem that we have foreseen in some of the magistrates when we hold workshops, and we want them to tell us exactly what challenges do they encounter when it comes to this. The first one that we had was that there was no definite definition of human trafficking that we had in the country, and as such, if prosecutors were struggling with that, you as a presiding officer, you find yourself in a situation where there is absolutely nothing that you can do, because you're sitting in a position where you have to be fed information by the prosecutors, and you can't even tell them exactly what is it that they have to do. So with magistrate, we also teach them about issues of procedural law, that when they deal with matters of human trafficking, exactly what is it that they have to look at and what kind of evidence have to be submitted before them. And as to the classification of the evidence also that they have to receive and such. And of importance is that we need to enforce on magistrate, not necessarily enforce, but to also inform them that they can make a use of evidence taken in camera, because of the sensitivity of the matter that comes before them, and the fact that the witnesses sometimes do not even want to be identified due to the chastisement that they might find from the community and those that know them, and also witness protection, also the conditions that you might use in these instances as a presiding officer is quite important. And also what we have picked up is the issue of language services. I had a colleague earlier on indicated that with foreign languages, because most of the people that comes before us are coming from different countries, and we also have to get foreign language interpreters to come and help us. And you find yourself in a difficult position as a presiding officer, more especially if you do not understand the language that the evidence is presented to you. you find that you do not even know whether the interpreter is telling you exactly the truth of what the person is testifying about. In one instance, in my situation, I found that with a Portuguese interpreter, lucky enough I can understand Portuguese and all that, and he was telling an accused person that if you do and say that, they're going to convict you. And he did not know that I understand the language. It is only when I said to him, are you aware of what you're doing? Because you're basically defeating the ends of justice here. And also it becomes a problem if you also do not know the language in this instance, let alone the victim of trafficking being not aware of any language around the area where they are victimized. Also, the aspect also that we have to look at is the issue of stereotyping. Because sometimes there's a lot of stereotyping on the witnesses that are coming before us. It depends on the judicial officer who is standing before them, listening to the evidence as to the issues of social context. So we are looking at social context aspect because we know that everybody is prejudiced. And you sometimes, when somebody comes and tell you that I'm being trafficked and this is what has been happening, at the back of the judicial officer's mind is like, yeah, you knew what was going to happen. This was just an easy thing for you to get money with. So we are trying to make them to move away from aspects of stereotyping and all that. And also the other aspect that we have to look at is that the judgments that we are busy dealing with, we need to teach the community about the reasons, giving reasons as to what is happening. Also telling those who are sitting in court as to exactly what is happening and understanding human trafficking and challenges. Now, obviously, we have gone through the international legislations that we have subscribed to, and as such, we also had domestic legislation that was used in courts, which were very different. It depends on the prosecutor as to what kind of domestic legislation they are going to use. They were not using TIP Act, which is now applicable in South Africa. I must also say that as it is at the moment, there's still a lot of this domestic legislation that is being used because some of the prosecutors do not even know how TIP works. So we do not have a hub where in a specific court there's a specialized prosecutor who's going to deal with TIP matters or not. And even when you're sitting in a family court under domestic violence or maintenance or whatever, you listen to what the person who's coming before you telling you exactly what is happening. And the only thing that you can do is that you cannot give any advice, which is the problem that we find ourselves in. You cannot advise, but we always say to judicial officers, you can refer. Because they say you cannot advise, you have to refer people to legal aid, you have to refer people to social development, social workers, you have to refer people to prosecutors to go and tell them exactly what is it that they have told you. But the problem that we encounter is that as soon as a person leaves your office, that's the end of the matter. Because when they go to these other role players, people are jumping all over the place and they're saying, this is not my place. So it is nobody's baby. And that is the biggest problem that we have because we have a lot of immigration people that are coming into our country. South Africa at the moment is finding itself in a position where everyone is flocking there and some of them are victims of human trafficking. And if there isn't any coordinated way of us as the first instance of people coming to court to help with this, then we're going to have a problem. I just want to mention what one of our former Chief Justices said, Mohammed C.J. He mentioned here, I quote, "The cold face of justice is in the magistrate court. It is in the magistrate court that justice is tested in its most crucial, most pervasive, most voluminous, most pressurized, and logistically most demanding dimensions. In literally thousands of cases every day in the most populous and the most isolated areas of the country, with sometimes obscene disparities in which the poorest of the poor and the richest of the rich, the most empowered and the most disadvantaged, the most learned and the most illiterate, often make their first contact with the judicial arena, of which the district courts are the engine rooms of justice," close quote. It shows that it is not only in the high courts where these matters can be identified and dealt with. Most of them, they come through to family court. They come through maintenance. They come through even when a person who's passing by, who's having this idea that I cannot talk to a police officer because we know that corruption is out there and it's rife. And as it is there that where judicial officers should be able to influence and make a big contribution in how we deal with this aspect at the judicial district magistrate level. As you can see, that is where a person who has been turned off at the police station, who has gone to the social workers and they're not able to help her, then they can knock on the door of the magistrate court and say, is there someone here who can listen to me? And there has to be someone who can listen to. And as such, this is where I'm asking, this is where I'm saying the judiciary should be vigilant. In as much as in our country we have Regulation 34 that says that you're not going to associate yourself with anything that is not judiciary aligned or whatever, lest you're going to be accused of not having impartiality in how you are approaching matters. Now, my question that I have here that I want to pose into this house is, are judicial officers the tails or the forefront? What is the role that we have to play in this aspect that we have, which is a problem here? More especially from my perspective, looking at the magistrate court as a court of first instance, and also looking at Regulation 34 of our Code of Conduct, as to how far are we supposed to operate? Are we proactive or are we reactive? And if we are reactive, up to how far can we play this a role in this matter? And as such, we know that the issue of impartiality, because you might end up having this person coming before you in court, and then you're going to lose aspects of impartiality. As you know, that judges should be and appear to be impartial in respect of their decision and decision making. And up to how far can we look at those aspects when you are dealing with matters like this? The absence of bias. In this instance, I come from a background of human rights when I was an attorney before I got into the bench. And I can tell you, losing that cloak, you know, moving away from a human rights background, and now you are coming into a place where your mouth is like sealed, it's something else. And I'm hoping that maybe by the time I leave this room, I would be having something that will help us into how we can this. Because magistrates, when we do workshops, are saying, but you know, Audrey, our role is, you know, closed. We can't do much more than we can do when we are presiding into cases. And I'm really saying, there is something that the judiciary can do, but how it can be done, I'm hoping, colleagues, that you will help me with that. Now, we acknowledge, as I said earlier on, that we've got regional problems that are caused basically by immigration and whatever. And there was an answer when it comes to children about Home Affairs that came with all regulations that deal with children, where you needed an unabridged birth certificates. But as it is at the moment, not only that was good to curb trafficking of children and whatever, but Home Affairs had to reverse on that decision, in a sense that now they have taken away the need for unabridged certificates because they're saying it's hampering tourism. So it is a problem that we are sitting with, where magistrates were having control over how children are moved around and all those things, if such legislations were available. And we have seen a number of factors contributing. Small airports that are emerging across the country, where people can just come into the country and leave. And unfortunately, those are the airports that are being used for human trafficking and all. And obviously, the sentences that are given by the common law laws that we had opted for use of fines. And with the sketch that we have, it is now, we are not saying magistrates should be told as to sentences that they need to give, but as it is with the problem that we have, maybe as it is the Act is saying that one can be given a life sentence. We had a landmark case in 2013, a timber magnate who has been convicted, appealed over the years, but I'm glad that the appeal failed, because now he's going to face 8 life sentences for human trafficking. It is not only that case. We also have the case of S versus Jazile, which deals with the aspects of Ugutwala, you know, forced marriages of a child, cultural aspects that are working. South Africa is still cultural in its approach and all. And I can tell you the case of S versus Jazile has put people in arms against the judiciary, because they are saying we are culturist, we are doing things the way we have to do, and as such, we cannot allow a situation where issues like this, our culture is not recognized by the South African Constitution. But what I like about the case of S versus Jazile, it didn't say that people do not have to practice their custom. They can continue using their custom, but what has to be looked at is the provisions of the Constitution, because it says that you can practice your custom as long as it does not impact on the rights that are given to a person through, through the Constitution here. And as such, I would say thank you for listening to me.
Thank you very much for your wonderful talk. I saw many people nodding, so I'm sure that they will connect with you later about these issues.